Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com with another sort of libertarian take on things. And today I'm going to give my libertarian take on the Biden-Trump debate. This is the third, or at least what was supposed to be the third debate. And again, the town hall thing became two dueling town halls or whatever. But this is the third debate scheduled by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a whole other issue. Screw those guys. But and again, if you're not familiar, just to give the TLDR version of it, it's that the Commission on Presidential Debates is an organization made by Republicans and Democrats to make sure only Republicans and Democrats are in presidential debates. So that's the reason why I say what I say. Now, the debate last night was pretty bad. I mean, I enjoyed as a sort of political file who just really enjoys just watching political stuff, but like they're just both really bad. Like Trump is just bad because again, he just has shows just such poor character and such poor temper. Um, and the thing is that is important to think about these issues and to really kind of appreciate and think through what needs to be thought through. You have to have patience. You have to have and the problem is after a while, if you can't trust what someone's saying, then it's hard to know what's true and what's not. So there's just some real big issues with Trump. And then when he'd certainly crossed the line when he brought IQ into the conversation when talking about immigration. That was just to me a line too far. Like there's just you don't do that, and it's just to sit there and cast aside or cast aspersions on the intelligence of people. Specifically, he was doing this referring to people who file for asylum for immigration in the United States and actually come back for the hearing. So people are actually following the rules. He is casting aspersions as to their knowledge, and it's just sort of a bridge too far. Um, so that was kind of what killed me with Trump, and also just a lot of really just silly things like talking about sticking people in basements and hanging out in basements and tiny windows and um, basically saying I take full responsibility, but then I blame someone else immediately, like literally in the next sentence. It was just bad. It was definitely better in the sense that Trump gave some better answers along the way, or at least answers that were almost a better answer. Like he was getting at something that could have resembled a point. Uh, and sometimes, like had he understood the stuff better, had he thought more critically about these things, he would have better answers. Because there are people with better answers to these things. There is sort of a counterpoint of view to the point of view that Biden is articulating. And my issue with Biden, he seems like a nice enough guy. Okay, I don't doubt that Biden's this nice old guy, but the problem is like he doesn't understand the fundamental issues that are really kind of going on here. Okay, when you start talking about like raising the minimum wage, again, yes, okay, it's not just about whether businesses stay in business, but there's all sorts of other negative consequences to raising the minimum wage. Now, you don't see necessarily a lot of these consequences in a dramatic fashion because generally most minimum wage increases are small, but we have seen these accelerate. And the problem is that they're not isolated, because if one area raises the minimum wage by a whole lot, this could create an incentive for a company to invest in, let's say, something like automation. So they discover how to make machines to replace labor because that's the only way to make the business viable in that area with the higher minimum wage. But once they came up with the machine, there's no reason to not implement the machine everywhere they have labor. So you don't just create unemployment in that place that raised the minimum wage. You create additional unemployment everywhere because you've just created you've diverted investment and research towards replacing labor, and now those new labor saving innovations are going to be applied everywhere. So and that's the other problem with like measuring these things is like you can't isolate, because there's also like positive things theoretically, like things that could be argued as positive things in the sense that you push up wages in X town. What happens is that now people now apply to work in that town for those jobs, which puts pressure on people in surrounding towns to raise their wages to compete to pull the quality labor. Problem is you do have an increase in quality applicants because you've raised, what you're going to pay. But that increase of quality candidates, one, pushes lower quality candidates out of the job market altogether. So now they're just systematically unemployed because they can't command the higher wage, and that higher wage will bring in people who can command it. So you've just kind of replaced your workers with better workers, but the people you said you wanted to help are now just worse off because they can't get a job at all. But also, those people who are more qualified are being diverted from other jobs that maybe could have better used that additional level of skill, whether they're soft skills or hard skills. When before, at a lower wage, you would have had people who were good enough to do what needed to be done, and you might have been able to actually hire more individuals. They could have developed more soft skills, climbed up the ladder. So you have that sort of effect. And then, of course, there's the potential that you're reducing profits of different enterprises, which you're like, well, then they just make less money. But the profits is what you use to grow your business. So that restaurant may not expand to 2 restaurants and hire double the amount of people. The restaurant may still exist. It may not go out of business, but it doesn't expand. It doesn't have there's no profits for that business to reinvest into itself, or 2, it doesn't have the profit margins to attract newer investors for it to expand. Because again, if I see like, okay, this business is only returning 3%, but there's other businesses that are returning 7%, well, my investment dollars are going to go there. So now these businesses are starved of the ability to raise more capital to grow. Okay, so that's another effect. And then, of course, there's the potential that to try to deal with that, you try to raise prices, which isn't always the case because, again, there's elasticity of demand. So your ability to raise prices isn't always there. So then you take the smaller profits, but then you're starved of capital. And you're kind of stuck. And the problem is, businesses that aren't growing are shrinking. You don't just stay the same size. You don't get to a point where you're a healthy sized business and you just stay there, because it's not like people have to buy your stuff. So you have to constantly be seeking new customers, seeking new ways to make money, because people get tired of the same stuff. Okay? Just because they liked your restaurant this year doesn't mean they're going to like it next year. So that whole thing, and then there's a healthcare thing. Okay? At the end of the day, like, yes, I agree that healthcare should be cheaper. Okay, most healthcare services and way healthcare is provided in the United States is ridiculous, but it isn't because we have a market. You don't have a market. Okay, individuals really have no autonomy when it comes to healthcare. Okay, basically the way healthcare works in the United States is you have a third party payer paid by a third party. Okay, which is ridiculous. So basically what happens here is that who your insurance is picked by your employer. So whether you have insurance a lot of times and what level of insurance you have is just based on what your employer decides to make available to you. So in that case, most health insurance companies, when they're creating their products aren't geared towards you, the person who's going to actually end up getting the healthcare services, but they're designed for the employer, designed for the person who sort of has the agency, the choice to pay. Some of your money be taken out of your paycheck to pay for that insurance, but you're still not involved in the decision making. So in that case, they don't care about your opinion. Then, okay, the insurance company, who pays your doctor. So when you go to the doctor's office, who pays your doctor for the most part is the insurance company. So doctors, and then they have to deal with whether they have the choice of the insurance company to decide to pay for your claims or not, which are always sort of up in the air, because even if your insurance company says they would cover it, then they may not cover it full price. And there's all these sort of like things that are up in the air, and the question is like, when will they pay for it? So doctors, have to increase their prices, and medicine companies have to increase their prices, because generally in negotiations with insurance companies they have to show it like a discount. And then 2, there's basically those insurance companies may take forever to pay, so they have to kind of factor in the interest of the time they have to wait for the money that comes in. So all this has to be factored in, which creates a very inflated price for healthcare services, because it's all designed to facilitate the insurance company making the payment, the third-party payer, who the third-party payer is not receiving the healthcare services, so they don't have any sort of they don't have any urgency to pay, and they have every reason to try to negotiate to pay less. So they want to drag out those payments. They want to really negotiate hard with healthcare providers, which limits the amount of providers who you can go to, because they may not take your insurance because they don't like the negotiations they enter. They don't like the terms. Okay, and your insurance company doesn't really care. They're not the one going to the doctor. So there's this whole level of third-party decision-making revolving around what should be, like, if you were paying the doctor, then the doctor would care about making prices that are easy for you to understand and creating a experience that's quality for you, because you are the decision maker. Okay, if you chose to buy your insurance, if you picked your insurance, again, same, similar, but again, ideal world, you'd be paying your doctor directly, and then again, they wouldn't have to price in all this interest for the delay in payment. They wouldn't have to price in all have to create this huge list price, because they have to price in sort of what they expect insurance companies will discounts what they will want. They'd be able to offer you a reasonable price, okay, and then they don't have to like factor in like sort of cash flow issues. Like there's all sorts of weird issues because of the system. But if you just switch to the government, yeah, okay, maybe you're less worried about like, okay, will you have insurance next month? But the fundamental issue far is like, okay, is the doctor going to sit there really cater their practice towards you? Okay, are the fundamental prices going to be any better when the government's doing the negotiation? They're still a third party. They still don't have the urgency to pay, because they're still not the ones going to the doctor. They have every reason to negotiate, and negotiate so hard that it pushes providers away, limiting your providers. Again, they have the same incentives that an insurance company has, because they don't want to spend the money, because they're not the one receiving the benefit. Okay, so when you create that disconnect between the person receiving the benefit and the person making the decision to pay, you're going to get this service. This is what's going to happen. Okay, it's switching the insurance company with the government. Again, you right now you have two third party payers. You have a third party in the employer, and you have a third party in the insurance company. So you're replacing two third parties with one third party, but the fundamental incentives are still there. Okay, you might address certain edge cases around the middle, like what happens about the poorest people who might not be able to afford insurance, people with pre-existing conditions. Like those things might be marginally addressed in the short run, but you're still not addressing that fundamental like pricing issue, that fundamental like disconnect between consumer and producer, that allow there to be enough healthcare for everyone to create the right incentives to figure out what is the right system, because none of the right incentives are connected. So, at the end of the day, when I hear Biden talk about his healthcare plan, and the other Democrats about their healthcare plans, like, I appreciate, their empathy for the plight of what's going on in the American healthcare system now, but it doesn't address the fundamental issues. It only provides a short-term band-aid that only will inevitably increase the unsustainability of what we have. Okay? Because now you're only extending it because you're just socializing the cost. You're essentially spreading the cost among everybody, but you're not stopping the drivers of the cost growing and driving the things that are driving the unsustainability. You're just kind of extending the life. Kind of like what always goes on with all these things. So it's like, okay, well, these sort of weird non-marketish paradigms that we like are no longer sustainable because they don't have the right incentives. So we'll just force that on everybody to make it sustainable for a little bit longer. Like, that's it's just not the deal. Okay, so that's my thoughts on the debate. Okay, Trump again just doesn't truly care enough about these issues. Doesn't care enough to understand them enough to truly be able to articulate it in any kind of way that paints any kind of vision. Okay, I think someone else put it well last night. They were speaking relative to healthcare, but the tweet was, I think, accurate at just about these parties in general, where Democrats are the party with a bad plan, but the Republicans are a party with no plan. Okay, and it doesn't mean I want some sort of large federal intervention. I don't. But having a plan of how to unwind existing interventions and having a vision and an articulation of why it matters, that's a plan. That's something that people can tangibly like focus on and anchor themselves when they look towards the future. And you don't get that from Republicans. It's really just a fight for power, so everyone can just dole out favors to whoever contributed the most money. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Political solutions are always bad solutions, which is why I want, as a libertarian, I'm involved in politics to encourage people to move problem solving outside of the political realm into their communities, into their families, into their individual hands. Because when we work together in a consensual manner, we get a lot more done a lot quicker, because there's a lot less of this having to wait till everybody's on the same page, because you already have control of your resources, and you get together with a bunch of other people who consent to use their resources with you on a small scale. You can get things done right away, make change now. And that's essentially what we need someone in the position of leadership to articulate. My name is Alex Merced. You can always find more of what I got to say over there at alexmerced.com. You can go become a patron, make a donation, crypto, whatever you want to do, or just check out my other content, videos, podcasts, etc. over there at alexmerced.com. Have a great day and enjoy.